Hey friends, welcome. Today we have somebody who has led quietly for decades. Pastor Robert Whinnen has served as Bauer Community Fellowship pastor for the last 34 years, and recently he announced a transition, not to rest, but into a new calling. Today, we're going to learn how God calls us into decisions and how to obey, even when the cost is high. Pastor Robert, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Mauricio.
Pastor Robert, for those who do not know you, tell us about yourself, where you come from, and how you got to leading the church for 34 years.
Right. I was born in the UP way up in a town called Hancock. My dad worked for the mines, and then the mines closed down in the late 60s. So we found ourselves in the Lower Peninsula, grew up in Hastings. My folks came to faith early in my life and started taking us to church. And so I grew up in the church pretty much my whole life. Our church was situated in our district of churches where the missionary home was just a mile from our church. So it was always full of missionaries who were home on furlough from other countries. Got to know a lot of missionaries and began to be sensitive to what missionaries were about. And so I went off to college to become a doctor and go to the mission field. And then I took a Bible class and I fell in love with that aspect of ministry and studying the Bible and learning. So then I decided to be a missionary pastor, doctor, something my counselor at school said, we've never had one of those, but we'll try it. And then as I took more and more classes in ministry, I sensed that was God's leading and didn't know where I'd go, but yeah.
And so what got you into leading this church, pastoring?
Yes, when I graduated from seminary, there was an opening here. And so we came up and candidated, and God opened the door to these wonderful people.
When you look back on your calling, beginning and now over the years, how have you learned to recognize when God is leading you?
Yes. Growing up in the church, it was a altar kind of church where every Sunday the altar was opened. And so even as just a young boy watching adults respond and then beginning to recognize when God was speaking to me very freely, going down front to pray about things, actually coming to salvation there at that altar, but really had a tender heart toward God's voice at a young age. That's where I began to recognize it.
Once you're clear that God is leading you into a certain direction, how do you actually step into obedience, especially when the cost is high, the outcome is uncertain?
Another aspect of hearing God's voice, which will help into that, is just the appointments God has brought into my life, the people God has brought into my life. I'm sure we're all that way. People who have coached, encouraged. And so learning to hear his voice through others has been amazing. And then invitations to opportunities, right? To serve in capacities I never knew I could or wouldn't have tried, to be on boards or committees or opportunities to speak in places I never saw myself speaking, but recognizing that that is part of God's leading in our life. That's how he works oftentimes, is giving us people, giving us opportunities. When it comes to obeying and following through, it sounds trite, but just do it. Just do it, step out, and say yes more than no. That's what I've tended to do, avail myself to this opportunity. I pray for opportunities. So say yes a lot more than you say no. And recognize also that the fear of man is a real thing and not let that take preeminence in my life, to realize I can be afraid of what man thinks. Then I'm missing out on God's calling.
Speaking of God's calling, you started thinking you're going to be a doctor, missionary.
Yeah.
At what point did you make the line of doctorate is not for me? How?
Opportunities on campus to lead ministry, the missions organization on campus, being an RA, just having those opportunities to lead and then be surrounded by leaders. College was a wonderful opportunity, just to learn from so many great people.
Yeah.
And just found that that was life-giving. Yeah, that's so much of God's voice. It's so life-giving.
Yes.
It might be hard. It's not necessarily easy,
Right.
but it's life-giving and it produces joy. So, yeah.
You recently made the, I'm sure, tough decision to step away from this ministry, which is significant, 34 years. What has this season been like for you? What did it take internally to say yes to that move?
I think it starts with God. He has always met our needs. And so learning I can trust him, it would make no sense. And I've told people this,
Hmm.
it makes no sense to step away at 60.
Right.
Make a whole lot more sense for our family to step away at 62 for financial reasons. Now I get to go find uh, some income and work as I continue in ministry, but I need to work as well. At 60, I could have stayed here. No one was asking me to leave,
Mhm.
but my wife and I knew through prayer it was time for the church to have a new season. It was time for us to have a new season.
Mm.
God was leading us away, much like he led Abraham out of Ur.
Yeah.
Abraham could have stayed. Where am I going? And part of that fear and what takes courage is we don't know where we're going, but we know that God has always worked in us and through us.
Pastor, as you look into this next chapter, how do you approach the future when not everything is clear yet? What anchors you in the seasons of uncertainty?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of our passwords is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
Mm.
It's one of the early verses most of us learn. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. I am wired to lean on my own understanding
Yeah.
and to work out all the details for myself. Um, Makes me sensitive to the fact that God every day has a plan for me and for my wife and for our family, for this church.
Hmm.
That's what gives us courage is God's not done here and he's not done with us. God goes before us.
Hmm.
I tell people that all my life. And now there's a lot of preach that I need to go live in a whole new season. And I'm looking forward to that venture of being stretched some more at 60 and really learning new things about life and myself, but especially about God
Mm.
and how he provides. We've seen him provide so many times for families, for ourselves. My dog swallowed a sewing needle last week,
Oh my goodness.
a sewing needle with thread on it. It never perforated the dog's inner systems at all and was removed by a vet. The vet couldn't understand how that happened, but we knew God cares for the sparrows
Yeah.
when they fall to the ground. He cares for our pets.
Yeah.
And that's such a minor example,
Yeah.
but I just chuckled when, the vet said it came out and we're okay. That's how life is. We come through things
Yeah.
and we're okay. There's bumps, there's bruises, but God is so faithful. He's so good. And his invitation, cast your cares on me. I studied that word years ago in
Hmm.
a sermon. The Greek there means hurdle. I mean, don't just go, here, God. Just give it everything you can and give it all to God. Just throw it with all your might up to God. So, and let him be Lord
Yeah.
in these things. But just knowing yeah, it's not the smartest time to step out and find another place in life at 60. And yet why not? It's a new venture and he's always going to be faithful.
Well, after more than 34 years, really, of walking in with God in different seasons, what is one piece of wisdom that you want people to carry with them when it comes to making decisions and following God's leading?
Yeah. It's something I share often with couples who are thinking about getting married as we go through premarital counseling. One of my deepest joys being a pastor is working with couples. And we talk about the concept of intimacy, meaning to know. That for me is just a lifelong thing to know first of all our creator
Hmm.
and his son Jesus Christ, right? I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection.
Hmm.
That's just a lifelong that never is satisfied. I think all of eternity we're going to just come to know more and
Yes.
more about our creator and our God. But to trust this God we know and carry that into family and spouse, to never stop wanting intimacy with our children with our spouse, particularly, never stop. You say, well, what else can I learn about my spouse, especially at 60? Oh, there's so much more to learn. We're learning about each other all the time.
Mm.
Um, you go through things you've never faced, and getting to know our children, letting them get to know us. But then there's this concept about intimacy is this, I don't know this about you and you don't know this about me, but God does.
Mm.
And that's the potential, right? That there's still more that God knows all about us that we get to discover together.
Yeah.
And so this concept of intimacy is really get to know a team of advisors. I've been so fortunate that early in my ministry, two older pastors came along beside me, one like 15 years older than me and one decades older than me, and just began to pour into me.
Mm.
I got to know them. They got to know my heart. They got to see some of my gifts or graces and steer me and coach me.
Mhm.
And I wanted that, right? And there
Yeah.
was a group of us that wanted that. And there's always something to learn. There's more knowledge to be gained and wisdom to be gained from
Yes.
others. So build that team. So become intimate with God. Never stop there. Become intimate with your spouse. Grow as in that partner that God has given to you and your family. But then that team of people who, when I came to this decision, not only was my wife there with me to help us make this decision, but I could talk to this team of people who I trust intimately because
Mhm.
I know them
Mhm.
and they ask me good questions and explore this thing with me. So
Wow.
intimacy is so important. Yeah. Yeah.
Pastor, as we close, thank you so much for sharing your heart. Is there any other comment you wish to make?
Yeah. Recently, our church, you were part of it, did a read through the whole Bible, Genesis 1 all the way through Revelation 22.
Yeah.
Took us 8 days to do that. And it was an
Awesome.
incredible experience. But a lot of times I just sit in and listen. I happen to listen to the book of Job being read. And in chapter 26, I'll just read it here, verses 2 and 3. Job is taunting his team, but in that, he is telling them really what he needed from them and what he wanted. Listen to this. Job 26:2. You are no help to a person who has no strength. You have given no help to one whose arm is weak. You have given advice to me as if I had no wisdom. This is not great wisdom you have shown. So he's saying, guys, I needed something totally different, but it's what he needed. He's saying, I needed advice from you. I needed wisdom.
Yeah.
I needed encouragement, right? And so getting to know people who are willing to expose that part of their heart and allow you to do that
Mm.
builds a team that when you face change or God is calling in a new direction, those are the people you can run these things by. Obviously, your spouse,
Yes.
but these people who can give wisdom, encouragement, strength, direction. Job needed it and he didn't get it.
Mm.
He had to go through this journey really alone and torn. And I've been so blessed to go through this journey. And I'm not going to name names, but just men in my life, particularly who I've journeyed with for a long time, who I trust and who provide those things that Job yearned for that I'm
Wow.
just been blessed to have.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep following me and I'm going to keep in their life. So, yeah,
That is so wonderful. The network of mentors and
that's right.
wisdom
That's right. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're welcome.
This is the end of episode 25. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one.